Dalia MacPhee, a serial entrepreneur, a success in the fashion world. Dalia, tell us how you're doing it all.
Thanks so much for having me. Well, I guess you know a little bit about me. Do you want the quick 1 minute version? Just a recap. So I'm Canadian originally. I started a fashion brand several years ago. Always had a love of fashion. Came from an entrepreneurial family, and I had a dream to get into the fashion world. So I created a small brand of about 8 dresses, and I took off to a trade show in Atlanta. Long story short, within a year, my brand could be found in several thousand stores in most major department stores. And it's been like many people in the business world. I've ridden the roller coaster up and down and up and down. We're still in several major department stores. And over the years, I started kind of trying to renegade some parts of the apparel industry. So we were one of the first mainstream fashion brands to go all vegan. We were also one of the first mainstream fashion brands to offer a full size range in all of our designs. And over the years, I've just kept morphing and growing. So the past several years, I started merging tech with fashion, and we started creating some very cool things with that. We have some cool products, which I'll tell you about, that are going forward. And then as of late, when COVID hit, we, like many businesses, had to take a breather and do a pivot. So we did a pivot in March and went from evening gowns and evening dresses to hospital gowns. And so we've been manufacturing for a few of the major hospital chains across the country, and then also started doing some innovation. So we invented and released a wallet called the antiviral wallet, and then just started innovating, which is something that I love to do. I've been creating as a separate company a lot of innovation, just solving problems here and there.
So an antibacterial or how's it work with the wallet? So it's wallets are disgusting. I think about like where we leave them in general, and then now we have COVID going on. So that's a pretty interesting solution.
Well, what happened was, COVID hit, and then obviously when we started working with some of the hospitals, I started asking what they needed, and I kept hearing at that moment, as everybody in the world heard, there's a shortage of masks. And it's one thing to hear it. It's another when you feel you're a part of it. Speaking to nurses that are crying, saying, I'm going into the COVID ward and I'm literally taking the same mask and using it, all day long. And I'm being told to use it, all week. And they're supposed to actually change it each time they go in and out. So I kind of got to work and thought, what is it that we can do to disinfect these masks, not just for the healthcare workers, but also for all of us that are using cloth masks or the KN95 versions. So basically what this is, and you can see it on our website or also antiviralwallet.com. But basically what it is it's looks like a wallet that you would put your credit cards in, except instead of putting your credit cards in it, you put 2 masks, one on each side, and it's thermal lined. So you zip it up, you plug it in the wall, and it heats up the contents inside the wallet to 180 degrees for 30 minutes, killing most bacteria and viruses. It's been tested. We had COVID tested on it, E. coli, and it was incredibly successful. It's kind of like having clean laundry coming out of, so if you've ever reused a KN95 mask, or even some of the cloth masks, if you are lucky enough to be traveling right now, there's odors, you can't get to a washing machine. And so it's also getting rid of all of that. So that's one of the products, which was fun to create and produce.
Excellent. So how are you doing with selling it? Are you using the same channels you used for your fashion? Are you using different channels to sell this?
So we produced for a couple of private clients in the healthcare world. We're in discussion actually with a few larger companies going forward. We made it available to the public. It sold out within a couple days. So we're doing a new production run. And we're making calls to some of the bigger chains. So I think that this is here for a while, and I'm 100% for safety tech in fashion. I love seeing where is there a problem that we can potentially solve, do it quickly, make it fashionable, make it easy, and make it affordable.
So Dalia, I want to dig down a little bit for our consumer products listeners, people, inventors of consumer products. How do you sell out in a couple days? How do you let enough people know about it that you sell out in a couple days? Because that's the hardest part. People could have wonderful inventions. How do you get the word out there?
Right. Great question. I think we're all still trying to figure that out a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of different ways, obviously, to generate sales, and then online sales are completely different than brick and mortar, and then different to, say, in the apparel world, for example, some of our online retailers where they'll do the work. In this particular case, it was the right thing at the right time. We have a pretty big following already from the apparel brand, so I put it through the apparel brand. So it was a bit of word of mouth and a lot of our own. This one was more organic. It was, I didn't even want to take the time because of the urgency, but it's a combo. And I don't know if any of us have quite gotten the formula yet. It's between the Google ads, Facebook ads, social media influencers, we have a large celeb following, which always helps. And, I'm still learning that online world myself a bit, because for years, our business model was always direct to the retailers, and the retailers handled it. And obviously, being an entrepreneur and in this ever-changing world, we have to keep stepping up and keep growing.
I was just thinking in my head, just trying to visualize how it works. So like you bring it with you wherever you go. Obviously, it's portable, right? Is it something that you plug in, or is it something that just kind of sits on its own? Like, how does it work?
So for those of you listening to this on the radio, we love the radio, but you'll be able to see this on Instagram, and you'll be able to see it on our YouTube channel, Passage to Profit Show. So please sign up for our YouTube channel and look for this episode with Dalia MacPhee, and you'll be able to see this incredible device that she's invented that is selling out everywhere.
This is the wallet.
Oh, it's nice. It's fashionable too.
That's what I said. It's vegan. And we made it affordable, by the way. It's like $49.99. Okay. So I'm unzipping it. So you can see it looks like a regular wallet that you would put your credit cards in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm opening it up, and you can see it's lined here, right? It's thermal lined.
Wow.
And this little piece in the middle here, this is where the electronics, the heating pad go. Okay. So what you would do is you would put one mask here, and then you'd put one mask here. It could be a cloth mask. It could be, I love the KN95s, which we also manufacture, but I personally like them because I feel that there's space to breathe and the filtration. But so you would put one and one, and you could also put coins and money if you wanted. You zip it up.
Money's dirty.
Money's so dirty.
Oh yeah. My girlfriend at the bank is like, oh, you wouldn't believe the stuff on money. So I think that's
exactly. So I don't know if you can see here, but there's a little slot for the plug. And then all that happens is you plug it in the wall. You don't have to press any buttons. It turns on automatically. You'll know it's on because you'll be able to feel the heat. And then in 30 minutes, it's going to turn off automatically. And you take your masks out, and they're completely clean. And like I said, aside from the fact that that we've tested them, you can tell the makeup stains are usually gone. There's no odor. It's clean. So, at the very least, you're able to kind of see for your own eyes that the bacteria has been taken away. And then when you're not using it, guess what? It's a completely sterile environment to hold your masks. And God willing, when we're through this nightmare, you can use it for something else. It's a nice looking wallet. This one doesn't have our logo on it because it was a very first sample, but ours have our beautiful logo on it. And if corporations, for example, are looking to gift these as a welcome back when the offices do reopen, we're offering that as well with, say, Google could print their logo on the top and whatnot. So it's just a way to keep people safe.
Yeah. And I think even beyond COVID, like germs are germs, right? So you're always going to want to disinfect things as much as possible, and God only knows how long we're going to have to be wearing these masks.
Right,
So,
right, exactly. And the only other thing is, I mean, you could use the traditional antiviral methods with sprays and whatnot, or the UV light. I have UV lights. Personally, I don't feel they're as effective as this. And, I like having something that's convenient to take with me. But
mhm.
so, for me, this is the fun stuff because I get to keep creating. And, we also did a fanny pack for a bunch of the health frontline workers because they needed packs to put their PPE in, say the masks and whatnot. And
Mhm.
so as we were creating it for one of our accounts, I'd said, so the frontline workers are putting their phones in these things too, right?
Mhm.
And he
Mhm.
said yes. And I said, so they have their phone in a fanny pack up against their person for 8 hours. Yeah, they
Mhm.
do. So I decided to line it with a Faraday type material that cuts out radiation by 80%.
Oh,
Mhm.
wow.
You'll get a call coming in, but if you were to hold an EMF reader, there's no radiation or very little radiation
Hmm.
coming through there.
Right.
So,
You don't want radiation up against your reproductive organs all day.
right. So, I mean, this is one of those things where then you start going, well, we could be putting this in all our pockets, and maybe we should be changing the codes in the apparel world where any pocket that would be, or maybe it would be labeled as the cell phone pocket. And so you would know that that would be the safe pocket.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
this hasn't been done before other than, like the strict Faraday where everything's blocked. And to me, I try to think in terms of reality. That's not reality, So 80% safer and
Yeah.
useful is better than nothing.
For sure. Have you ever thought of doing something to help disinfect cell phones? Because I feel like my cell phone's like, I don't know, everybody's cell phone's gross. We touch it, we touch other things, and I always think
Yeah,
about
no,
that.
it's a good point. I think somebody has, so I stayed away from it.
Okay, gotcha.
I do think, in fact, you can probably go on Amazon. I think somebody's come out with, or a few companies have come out with a box that you can put your cell phone in. But I mean, it's worth mentioning, right? Because that's cumbersome. So now you're thinking, can I travel? Can I, if I'm taking carry on a plane when we do travel, can I, take UV? So
Hmm.
it's so many questions, but maybe someone will come up with something hearing this.
Right. So you've come up with so many good ideas. It's just amazing. And you and I were talking about testing ideas. So in the United States, you have a year before you have to file your patent application if you make something public. So you can test your whatever you're creating for a year in the US before you file your patent application. Not so in other countries. So if you want to see if it's going to sell and you just want to sell it in the US, you can do the whole 9 yards and then file a year after your first public disclosure. But in Europe, you have to file immediately before you publicly disclose. But you were saying that you do use that as a strategy. So because you have so many ideas, some things you won't patent right away. You want to see how they do, right?
Well, for sure. And, this is a slightly newer avenue for me. I've always um, been a bit of an inventor, but owning the apparel business and with things being a more traditional route in the earlier years, I kind of put it on the back burner. And then, but I always had the bug. I came out with the first light up premium denim jeans in the world back in 2001. So there's been, but I put a bunch on the back burner, and then it was the past couple years. I started with the EquiSafe fire retardant blanket for horses with the GPS built in, and then after that, I got the bug and said, okay, what else? And so I started learning about patents. It was as an entrepreneur, kind of starting from scratch and going, whoa, whole new world. How do we do this? And part of it was speaking with a lot of friends who are very familiar with patents, that are all fellow entrepreneurs that have experience. And I don't actually need to hire a lawyer for the provisional. I ended up anyway doing that because I wanted to be careful. But so often, as I'm learning with this, what I'll do is if I think it's a really great idea that can make money,
Mhm.
even if it's down the road. I'll usually try to at least get the idea out or have it put on our site or whatnot, so people are aware that, hey, this came from here. And then the next stage would be filing the provisional, whether we write it in-house or hire somebody to do that. And then, of course, I think that the key is when you get the provisional out, you've got a year to test it. So you should be ready to go to production at that point, is my thought, because you have a year to really test it, on the mass market level and see, is it working, is it not, before then going, to the next stage. But, I had to learn so much about this, because let's say you do the provisional and you think, okay, great, I have a year. Well, what happens if while you're selling within that year, you start getting really valuable feedback from your retailers? You know what? I want you to tweak this. I want you to tweak that. It would sell more if you could do this. Actually, the market's changed. So this is all great. And we have sales coming in, but now that provisional doesn't really mean much because we have to redo the provisional. We can't just take that to the patent, so it's a slippery slope.
Well, there's a couple ways to manage that.
Okay.
And one way is, if you do a claim with your provisional, a broad enough claim, it may cover everything you do along the way.
Right.
But it would take a patent attorney to figure that out for you. So what we advise clients, first of all, you're right that you want to actually patent what you're selling. So you could go with an invention to your manufacturing plant, because we had this happen to a client early on, and they could say, look, we can't make it the way you have it. You have to revise it. So then they have to revise it. And they had to do that 2 or 3 times. And what we did was provisionals all along the way. So they did the first provisional, and then we did another provisional 6 months later. Then we did another provisional 2 months after that. And then we finally did the actual utility patent, which is the one that the patent office looks at, which has to be done within a year of filing your provisional. So there's a couple of different ways to do it, but you're right. You want to make sure that you're patenting what you're selling. And there's a lot of changes, you have to figure out how to cover that.
Right. And I think, as you know, I can't wait to speak with Richard, because I have so many questions going forward, because it is a new world. Mm-hmm. And I think it's got to be intimidating to a lot of new inventors on just learning, from the beginning to the end. One thing that I heard that I was a bit surprised about is that most patents get rejected the first time, unless that was my lawyer. It's just saying that.
That's a patent office's job. They look at it, they go, nah, sorry.
Right, but I hadn't been warned the first time, and I was like, oh my God, we failed. This is horrible. So it's really learning, and how many years it takes. It's as long to yield as a good crop of wine.
I know. So after that first rejection, which happens all the time, you have to go back and argue with the patent office, and that's where they're lawyers. So you really need an attorney to do that argument, because they understand each other. And like with Richard and the people at the law firm, they talk to these people called examiners all the time. So they know each other and they know what these people are expecting. And so they can we have a pretty high success rate for getting the patent applications through to the final patent. But you're right. It is a shock, and people are like, what? No.
Right.
Yeah. And they sometimes cite ridiculous things, because they look at what's already in the literature and what patents have already issued. And you might have like support stand for something, and they'll cite a paper cup, and you're like, what?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Like I said, I can't wait to chat with you guys about things going forward, because I do feel this is one of those things you don't skimp on. You have to be in good hands. I think that, you guys are worth what you're paid for what you're doing, because it's difficult. So, and there's an art to it. And if you're doing it, you want to do it right. The only part that I know for sure that I can very confidently say is the market part, which is, make sure that it's something you're going to produce and make money doing, and that there's a need for. Have a thick skin and run it by 1 million people.
Absolutely. And you can have the best idea in the world and something everybody wants, but if you don't have the marketing, you're going to fall flat on your face. So
Right.
it's, and the trademark is part of that too, which is something that we do too. So Kenya is like a marketing expert. She's the media maven for iHeart, so she can speak to that as well. You're absolutely right. Those, so you have to have those buckets of money for the different areas to really be a successful entrepreneur. And marketing is huge. Get protecting your intellectual property is huge.
I'm thinking first to market never hurts, you know. So, you know, sometimes you have to just be bold and throw it out there. So,
Right. And you can do that in the US without a patent for a year, and then you can file your provisional after a year, and then your utility another year later. So that's why the United States is such a great place for people to invent.
right.
So, how many things have you invented and taken to market?
Oh my gosh. Let me think here. So probably about six.
And what have been your biggest challenges with that?
Oh my gosh, it depends. So the first one of the first big ones was the EquiSafe blanket, which is I'm an equestrian and my horse was affected by the California fires a few years back, and luckily he was fine. But I was out of town and I called the stables and I said, what's going on? Or, I heard the fires are coming or the horse is evacuated. And I was shocked because they'd said, well, the stables are close to catching on fire and the fire department's actually here, but they won't allow the evacuation trailers in because it's standard to block the roads from any commercial vehicles coming in, because if say the commercial vehicle breaks down, then regular traffic is blocked. So they're not letting the evacuation trailers in, which means the horses are stuck. And the fire department is literally saying, set the horses loose or hose them down so they burn slower. And knock on wood, everything was okay. But I'm sure, again, everyone saw the news when the California fires hit 2 years ago, and horses were being set loose because there was no choice. And so that's sometimes what happens, which people don't understand. So the eureka moment went off in my head. I wasn't thinking dollar signs at all. That was not that product. That product was literally, somebody needs to create this and I know how to do it. So and that product was it was complicated from beginning to end for so many reasons. It was complicated because I wanted to make it affordable. I wanted to make it environmentally friendly, safe to humans, safe for the horses. So I had to think of every possible scenario that could go wrong. What if the horse is running and he gets caught on something? Okay, we need to make the back straps completely safe and quick release. So, and then teaching the factories something brand new that they didn't know. And I was so detail specific. I wanted to make sure that the thread was fire retardant, that the reflective strips were fire retardant. Then we had to do the GPS factor. The GPS needed to be forged. So learning all of that. So that one was really tough because it was all of the composition, making it affordable, and then convincing a world that's a little bit more conservative to adopt something new. So in order to actually get the accounts, I went to the best ones because I felt that there was an urgency to get this to market. And I flew into the account myself. I didn't want to put it in the hands of a salesperson because this was my baby. And they said, we love the idea. We're not taking on any new clients. And I said, no problem. I brought a blowtorch. Do you want to see me blowtorch the blanket over my arm? And they were like, hang on, we're grabbing our sales manager. Let's go outside for this. So, so that was, but I mean, all of them have been a little bit challenging because when you're first to market, even if it's the best idea since sliced bread, you have some convincing to do.
You do. And that can be the tough part. And entrepreneurs just have to keep going though, right? Because eventually it will catch on. So Kenya, I was going to ask you, like, what marketing tips do you usually have for entrepreneurs really trying to get the word out?
I would just say the first thing is like to really just know your product and the benefits of your product well, because if you know them well, then you're going to be able to express that to your target market. People are never really buying anything, right? They're buying benefits. So if you're really able to know them and articulate them properly, then, the sell is going to be easy. And, you already know because you sold out in 2 days. So obviously the benefits of your product were, known, and people resonated with that, and it converted.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I think we're at the end of our time for this segment, but this has been fabulous. Listeners, if you're just tuning in, the podcast comes out tomorrow. You have to hear Dalia because, wow, this lady is amazing. And stay tuned for the other people that are coming up on the show. It's always just so fascinating to hear all these new ideas and these new companies. So you are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart and Kenya Gibson filling in for Richard today and our special guest, Dalia MacPhee, and we'll be right back.